In 2011, psychologists at New York University wired volunteers to blood pressure monitors and asked them to do something harmless, fantasize vividly about getting everything they wanted: the job, the body, the life. As the images played, the researchers watched the numbers. They expected ignition, the physiology of a body preparing to chase. They saw the opposite: systolic pressure sliding downward, energy draining out of the system. On paper, the dreamers looked like people who had just finished a long day of work, because as far as their nervous systems were concerned, they had. You've done this. You'll probably do it again tonight. And every time you do, something inside you quietly cashes a check for work that never happened. There are 4 of these payments. The 4th is why a man once burned the most anticipated masterpiece on Earth and felt lighter. Every explanation you've ever been handed for why dreamers stall was designed to flatter the dreamer. Laziness, which implies the engine works and is merely idle. Fear of failure, which implies a warrior waiting on courage. Perfectionism, which is just vanity wearing a lab coat. All 3 share one assumption: that the dream is fuel and something downstream is blocking the fuel line. The research says the assumption is backwards. The dream is not the fuel. The dream is the payment. And a payment received in advance is not motivation. It's severance. The psychologist running that blood pressure study was Gabriele Oettingen, and she has spent over 30 years documenting a finding almost no one in the motivation industry will say out loud. In 1991, she followed women through a hospital weight loss program in Pennsylvania. Before it began, she measured how positively each woman fantasized about her transformed self. The compliments, the clothes, the ease of it. 1 year later, the women with the rosiest fantasies had lost an average of 24 pounds less than the women who had imagined the process going badly. Not slightly less, 24 pounds. She ran the same test on university graduates entering the job market. The more time a student spent savoring fantasies of the successful career, the offer letter, the title, the salary, the fewer applications they actually sent. 2 years later, fewer offers, lower pay. The fantasy hadn't pulled them toward the life. It had fed on the energy required to build it. There's an old word for this condition, so precise and so unflattering that English quietly stopped using it. Velity, the faintest degree of wanting, a wish that never becomes strong enough to recruit the body. Most people assume velleity is weak desire. It isn't. It's desire that has already been paid, and a paid desire has no reason to move. What follows are the 4 payments. 4 bribes your own dream hands you, on schedule to make sure it never has to exist. Watch closely how each one operates, because you have accepted all 4 recently. Bribe 1. The feeling arrives before the work. Go back to that lab. The volunteer's blood pressure didn't drop because fantasy is relaxing wallpaper. It dropped because the body cannot fully distinguish a vividly simulated outcome from an approaching one. Mental imagery runs on much of the same neural machinery as perception. A rehearsed future gets processed, in part, as an incoming event. So when you spend 20 minutes inside the acceptance letter, the launch day, the mirror 18 months from now, your physiology files a report. Object acquired. Stand down. Oettingen's team measured what stand down looks like. Lower systolic pressure, lower self-reported energy. In one version of the study, people induced to fantasize about the coming week going perfectly went on to accomplish measurably less that week than people asked. To picture it plainly, the dream didn't just fail to help, it subtracted. Sit with the mechanics of that, because it quietly rearranges the entire question. You've been treating your fantasies as previews, trailers for a film in production, but a trailer costs the studio nothing, and your fantasies are not free. Each one is consumption. Each one draws down the exact reservoir of tension. The itch, the hunger, the unbearable gap between here and there that action was supposed to spend. Desire is not infinite. It's a pressure differential between the life you have and the life you can picture. And every night you open the valve inside your imagination, the pressure that was supposed to move your body equalizes harmlessly in your head. Freud saw this a century before the blood pressure cuffs. In a 1908 lecture on writers and daydreaming, he made a claim that sounds cruel until you test it against your own evenings. The happy do not fantasize. Only the unsatisfied do. A fantasy, he argued, is not a plan for the future. It's a correction of the present. The psyche editing an unbearable now into a watchable one, which means the dream's actual job, its functional role in your mental economy, was never to be built. Its job is to make tonight survivable. And it is spectacular at its job. That's the problem. The fantasy delivers the finished version. The applause without the shaking hands, the physique without the 400 unremarkable workouts, the book without the 11 months of writing badly. Reality's opening act cannot compete with fantasy's finale, so every genuine first step arrives feeling like a demotion. You sit down to write the actual first paragraph, and it reads like a child's homework next to the reviews you've already received in your head. Of course, you close the laptop, you've attended the premiere. Why would you go back for the auditions? There's a tolerance curve too, the way there is with any substance. The first fantasies, years ago, were cheap and electric. Now they need more production value to deliver the same warmth, more detail, more imagined dialogue, longer sessions. You've noticed this without letting yourself notice it. The dream requires higher doses than it used to, and reality pays out less than ever by comparison. That widening gap has a direction. It only widens. One payment, collected nightly, for years. But chemistry only explains what happens on the couch, alone, in the dark. It doesn't explain why the couch gets worse the moment you open your mouth. Bribe 2. Applause for the unbuilt. In 2009, Peter Gollwitzer, another NYU psychologist, and not coincidentally Oettingen's husband, published a set of experiments with a finding so inconvenient that the entire goal-setting industry has simply agreed to look away from it. He took law students and had them write down concrete intentions tied to the identity they were chasing, the study commitments, the practice habits, the behaviors of a person becoming a serious lawyer. Then came the manipulation. For half the students, the experimenter read their intentions and acknowledged them, noticed them. For the other half, the page was collected unread, as if it were scrap. Later, everyone was handed 45 minutes of real legal casework and told they could stop whenever they liked. The students whose intentions had been witnessed quit earlier. They did less of the actual work, and when asked afterward how close they felt to being the lawyer they intended to become, they reported feeling closer. Read that again, slowly. Being seen intending the identity partially substituted for earning it. Gollwitzer ran the design 4 separate times. The result never moved. The paper's title reads like a warning label the industry refuses to print when intentions go public. The mechanism underneath had been mapped back in 1982 in a theory he built with Robert Wickland called symbolic self-completion. When an identity matters to you and you haven't earned it yet, the incompleteness generates tension, and the mind, being an economist, does not care how that tension gets discharged. Real progress discharges it, but so do symbols, the title in the bio, the gear, the vocabulary, the announcement, which is why the announcement is the second bribe, and it pays even better than the first. The fantasy pays you in private chemistry, the announcement pays you in public identity, and the public wage is stronger because other people's eyes make it feel notarized. Run the audit on your own ledger, the domain name you bought for the business that doesn't exist, the camera that has produced 11 minutes of footage, the word founder in a profile describing a company that is, structurally, a note on your phone, the full author setup, the software, the desk, the playlist assembled for writing the book that currently has a title and a feeling. Each of these felt like a step at the time. None of them were steps. They were withdrawals, small advance payments of identity, each one draining the precise incompleteness that was supposed to force the work into existence. And the people around you are unwitting tellers in this bank. Every time you describe the plan and someone's face lights up, every "that's amazing, you should absolutely do it," a wage gets paid out. They believe they're encouraging the dream. They are compensating you for its absence. This is also why the modern world produces fewer finished things per dreamer than any era before it, while producing infinitely more announcements. You now carry a device engineered to let you declare an identity to hundreds of people in under a minute, and to have it acknowledged, witnessed, the way Gollwitzer's experimenter witnessed, before breakfast. Symbolic wages, on demand, at scale. A century ago, a man had to at least walk to the tavern to describe the novel he was going to write. If you watch carefully, you'll notice the people who actually finish things have developed a strange habit. They've stopped selling the future entirely, not from humility, from arithmetic. They learned, usually by bleeding for it, that a described dream is a spent dream, so they only report what already exists. You know at least one person like this, the one who said nothing for a year and then simply handed you the thing. And you know the other kind. You may be the other kind. Now, you'd be right to push back here, because anyone who has spent 10 minutes around motivational content has already heard the counter-evidence, the famous study. Write your goals down, declare them, review them, and you'll out-earn everyone who didn't. Yale proved it in 1953. About that, The story is always told the same way. In 1953, researchers surveyed Yale's graduating class and found that only 3% had written specific goals. 20 years later, the team tracked the class down and discovered the 3% had accumulated more wealth than the other 97% combined. It is the founding miracle of the goal-setting religion. It has been preached from decades of stages, printed into bestsellers, repeated by executives, coaches, and probably someone at your dinner table. In 1996, a writer named Lawrence Tabak, on assignment for Fast Company, went looking for it. He contacted Yale researchers. Yale's own staff searched the records. The secretary of the actual class of 1953 was consulted. Surviving members of the class were asked whether anyone ever had surveyed them about their goals. Nothing. No study. No survey. No data. There's a Harvard version of the tale, set in 1979. Same 3%, same 20 years, same miracle. And it is equally sourceless. The single most cited piece of evidence in the history of the achievement industry is a ghost story. Meanwhile, the studies that actually exist, Oettingen's, Gollwitzer's, run on real subjects with real instruments, kept finding the arrow pointing the other way. An entire cathedral built on an experiment that never happened, while the experiments that did happen were quietly reporting. The visualizing, the declaring, the vision boards. That's the anesthetic, not the cure. Which returns us to the man with the laundry basket. His name was Jean Sibelius. By the late 1920s, he was among the most celebrated living composers on earth. A national monument in Finland, performed across the world, granted a state pension so he could work undisturbed in his forest villa at Järvenpää, north of Helsinki. In 1926, he completed a tone poem called Tapiola, and the musical world leaned in for whatever came next. What came next was the Eighth Symphony. He committed to it. Serge Koussevitzky, the great conductor of the Boston Symphony, secured the premiere, announced for the 1931 season, then the 1932 season. Sibelius kept writing to him, nearly there, one more pass, soon. In 1933, he sent a movement out to a professional copyist. The copyist's invoice survives. The symphony was real. It existed in pages you could hold. And then, for more than 2 decades, one of the most anticipated works in the history of music remained permanently almost finished, while the man who owed it went quiet. Understand what those decades were paying him. Every year the Eighth stayed a promise. Sibelius remained the man composing the great symphony of the century. The unheard masterpiece cast no shadow. It contained no weak passages, disappointed no critic, aged not a single day. He collected its prestige annually, the exact way you collect the identity of the book you're going to write, the company you're going to start. But this kind of arrangement compounds, and what the Eighth was actually protecting him from, that is the third payment, the one your dream is wiring to you right now. Bribe 3. Immunity from the verdict. In the autumn of 1954, a Chicago housewife named Dorothy Martin began receiving messages. Through automatic writing, she said, from a planet called Clarion. The messages were specific. A great flood would destroy the region before dawn on December 21st. The faithful would be lifted out by flying saucer at midnight. A young psychologist named Leon Festinger heard about the group and did something quietly brilliant. He infiltrated it. He and his colleagues joined the believers and waited, notebooks hidden, to observe a question no laboratory could ethically stage. What does a mind do when its most important belief is executed in front of it? Midnight came. No saucer. Dawn came. No flood. Some of these people had quit jobs, sold houses, dismantled marriages for this. What they did next is the part to memorize. They did not update. Within hours, Martin channeled a new message. The group's faith had shone so brightly that the planet had been spared, and this small circle, which had previously dodged reporters, began phoning newspapers, recruiting, evangelizing with an energy they had never shown before the prophecy failed. Festinger had predicted it almost exactly. The theory he built out of that living room, cognitive dissonance, says that when reality collides with a belief your identity is welded to, the mind rarely surrenders the belief. It's cheaper to renovate reality, and the more you have already invested, the more aggressive the renovation. Now lower the stakes from spaceships to you. Somewhere in you lives a belief with your entire identity welded to it. I am capable of something exceptional. And every ordinary day you live, every evening of scrolling, every year inside the same job, arrives like a small December 21st, a quiet disconfirmation. The mind will not tolerate that collision. But look at the options on its table. Resolving it through action is expensive. Months of effort, no guarantee. Resolving it by lowering the belief is unbearable. That's an amputation. So the mind takes the third door, the cheap one, the Clarion door. It manufactures evidence that the belief is still on schedule. More research, another course, a refined plan, a new tool, a cleaner workspace, a deeper study of the craft of the thing instead of the thing. Preparation. Preparation is the mind paying itself hush money. It generates the sensation of progress with none of the exposure, and the sensation was always the actual product. Audit yourself honestly, just once. Of everything you've filed under getting ready these past 2 years, the saved videos, the bookmarked articles, the courses, the note systems, what percentage was logistics, and what percentage was dissonance management wearing a tool belt? You already know. That's why the question stings. There's a second layer to this immunity, and it's the one Carol Dweck spent a career circling. In a study she ran with colleagues at the University of Hong Kong, a university where all instruction happens in English, students who were struggling with English were offered a remedial course that would directly improve their entire academic future. The students who believed ability is a fixed quantity, you have it or you don't, were dramatically less likely to sign up. They declined the exact help they needed because accepting it would put their deficiency on the record. That is the fixed mind's core transaction. It will trade real improvement to keep the file sealed. And a big dream held inside that kind of mind was never a goal. It's a sealed file. The unwritten novel is still potentially brilliant. The unlaunched company still has a flawless trajectory. The untried version of you is still technically unlimited. The moment you begin, potential collapses into data, and data can be mediocre. Beginning converts you from unfalsifiable into gradable, so the dream stays enormous on purpose, vague on purpose, dated someday on purpose, not despite the fact that it can never be tested in that form, because it can never be tested in that form. That is the third bribe. As long as the dream remains theoretical, you remain the one thing in your life, reality is never permitted to grade. And most people, offered the choice in the dark, where no one can see them take it, would rather stay ungraded than become good. But even immunity is small change next to what's beneath it. The first 3 bribes protect the dream. The fourth one buys off your entire life. Bribe 4, permission to not live yet. Carl Jung lifted a phrase from the Roman poet Ovid, puer aeternus, the eternal boy, to name a pattern that kept walking into his consulting room. But it was his closest collaborator, Marie-Louise von Franz, who dissected it in a legendary series of lectures at the Jung Institute in Zurich in the winter of 1959. Her subjects were not failures. That's what makes the lectures so uncomfortable to read. They were brilliant, magnetic, often genuinely gifted people, overflowing with plans, allergic to nothing except commitment. And beneath the individual biographies, she found one identical structure, which she gave a name that belongs on certain bedroom ceilings: the provisional life. The provisional life is the condition of treating your actual existence as a rough draft. The job is temporary, obviously not the real career. The city is temporary. The relationship is fine for now. The apartment, the routine, the year itself, placeholders. Because the real life, the one that matches the dream, is scheduled to begin later, after a threshold event that keeps politely rescheduling itself. Von Franz's longest case study was a man half the world adored, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, the aristocrat pilot who wrote The Little Prince, a story told by a flyer about a boy who cannot stay, who belongs permanently to elsewhere. She read the author through his book, a man most alive in the air, in transit, in the not yet, for whom every landing felt like a small imprisonment. He died in 1944, alone in a reconnaissance plane over the Mediterranean. Whatever else is true of that remarkable life, he was spared the thing this pattern fears above all others: an ordinary Tuesday on the ground that counts. Because that's the engine under the provisional life. And it is the fourth bribe in its purest, most expensive form. As long as the dream is pending, the present is exempt from judgment. Feel how that operates in you. If this year is only the loading screen, this year cannot be wasted. Wasted is a verdict, and verdicts apply exclusively to things that count. The dream hangs over your actual days, like diplomatic immunity. The job you dislike says nothing about you. It's a placeholder. The skills you haven't built, the risks you haven't taken, the person you've been all decade, none of it is admissible in court, because the real you hasn't taken the stand yet. You are not using the dream to design your future. You are using it to avoid sentencing your present. Once you see this, a set of small mysteries about yourself solves all at once. Why? A simple logistical question. So, when does that actually start? triggers a flash of something embarrassingly close to hatred. The question wasn't rude, it subpoenaed the file. Why taking one real, modest step toward the dream so often produces not pride, but a flat, gray deflation you've never had words for. The step shrank the dream into a project. Projects are measurable. Measurement ends the exemption. Why the almost moves keep happening, the applications opened and abandoned, the drafts at 90%, the launch postponed for one more polish. Finishing was never the goal of the finishing. Some animal part of you understands that the day the dream becomes real, a clock starts on a finite, gradable, ordinary life, yours. And every previous year retroactively becomes a year that counted. Most explanations of procrastination stop at fear of failure. One floor down sits what we just left, fear of the verdict. But the floor below that, the one with no lights on, is this. Part of you does not want the dream to arrive. The dream was never your destination. It is your alibi, and you cannot want the arrival and the alibi at the same time because the arrival destroys it. So the fantasies continue nightly, on schedule. Pleasure in advance, identity without evidence, immunity from the verdict, permission to not live yet, 4 payments, 1 employer, and the position it hired you for, the position you have now faithfully held for years, is guardian of a thing that must never exist. Which leaves the only question that matters, not how to get motivated. Motivated is what the payments felt like going in. The question is how you make the dream stop paying. The repossession. Everything the self-improvement economy sells is designed to add force. More drive, more vision, more belief in yourself. But you cannot out-motivate an employer who pays you to stay home. Adding force to a bribed system only raises the bribes. The move that works is repossession, taking the payments back one at a time until delivery becomes the only way you can get paid. The researchers already found the levers. They're just never packaged this way because sabotage your own dream's payroll doesn't fit on an airport bestseller. The first bribe gets poisoned at the source. Oettingen spent the second half of her career building the antidote, and its shape is almost insulting in its simplicity. Pure, positive fantasy sedates. You know that now. Pure, grim realism paralyzes. What works, measurably, is the sequence she calls mental contrasting. Run the fantasy, vividly, for a moment, and then, before the warmth fades, drag the single ugliest internal obstacle into the same frame and hold both at once. The finished book, then the specific weeknight version of you who always folds by 9, the physique, then the exact excuse that has beaten you 40 times, wish, outcome, obstacle, then a plan. The collision changes what the fantasy is. When the goal is genuinely feasible, contrasting raises measured energy and real-world effort. The dream stops being a consumable and becomes a trigger wired directly to its own obstacle. And when the goal isn't feasible, contrasting does something almost merciful. It lets you finally put the thing down. That's its own dark gift. Some of what you've been calling dreams are just debts you're tired of servicing and you're allowed to stop. For the plan, she borrows her husband's weapon, Gollwitzer's implementation intentions. Rigid little if-then statutes. If it's 8 p.m. and the phone is in my hand, then the phone goes in the drawer and the document opens. Across a meta-analysis of 94 studies, that one dull-sounding structure moved goal attainment further than almost any self-regulation tool psychology has ever tested. It works because it deletes the negotiation. And the negotiation is where the payments get made. The second bribe you starve. No more announcing, not as mystique, as arithmetic. Every declaration is a withdrawal from the one account of tension that has to stay full enough to force the work out of you. So adopt a single statute. Report, never preview. Speak only of what exists. When someone asks about the dream, the honest answer becomes, I'll show you when there's something to show. And then you get to feel, for the first time in years, the strange pressure of an identity that has no way of getting paid except delivery. That pressure is not a problem. That pressure is the asset you've been liquidating one conversation at a time. The third bribe you repossess by buying the verdict early, at the smallest price it will ever cost. You will be graded eventually. That was never optional. What's optional is the size of the courtroom. So you take a fragment of the dream. One chapter, one prototype, one client, one open mic, one honest submission. And you deliberately put it in front of judgment now, while it's cheap. Not to succeed, to convert. Each small verdict converts you, 1 degree at a time, from a sealed file into a person with data. And people with data are the only people on earth who improve. The fixed mind will scream that this is exposure. It's the opposite. It's paying down the debt before the interest becomes your 40s. The fourth bribe, the exemption, dies the moment someday gets a date. Not a deadline for achieving the dream, a date on which the provisional life ends, a specific day, close, on which this year starts counting, and the current you takes the stand. Mel Robbins built an entire method out of how narrow that doorway is. Her observation, blunt, mechanical, and matching what everyone recognizes from the inside, is that an impulse to act survives roughly 5 seconds before the brain's protective machinery smothers it. 5 seconds is about how long the payment window takes to open. Her counting ritual is crude on purpose. It isn't motivation. It's a jailbreak, executed before the guard finishes standing up. And once you're finally moving, Stephen Pressfield's old observation from The War of Art becomes your instrument panel. Watching decades of his own avoidance, he noticed that the internal resistance, a task, generates scales with how much that task matters to who you are becoming. Most people read that as a lament, read it as a compass. The project you feel the most dread circling is almost never a random fear. Dread is the payroll office fighting for its life. Walk toward the dread, the man who felt lighter. One last time, the house at Järvenpää. By the 1940s, the Eighth Symphony was no longer a piece of music. It was a creditor. Koussevitzky's letters kept arriving. Journalists asked about it the way one asks about a dying relative, and the interest had compounded past anything payable, because after decades, as the announced masterpiece of the century, the real Eighth could only ever be smaller than the promise. Sibelius was trapped inside the purest version of everything you've just watched. Paid for years in prestige, protected for years from the verdict, exempted for years from finishing. Then, on a day in the mid-1940s, his wife Aino watched him gather manuscripts into a laundry basket, carry them to the dining room stove, and feed them to the fire, page after page. She later described what happened to him afterward. He grew calmer, then, gradually, lighter. The man had spent 30 years being slowly eaten by an unfinished dream, and the only peace he ever found was the morning he killed it. That is one exit. It is a real one, and some of you are closer to it than you think. The quiet decision, some future evening, to finally let the whole thing go and stop pretending. It does bring relief. Aino wasn't lying. But there are 2 exits from a hostage situation. You can shoot the hostage, or you can pay the ransom, the work, the smallness, the verdicts, and walk out with the thing alive. Sibelius's dream had 30 years of compound interest and a waiting world. Yours doesn't. Yours can still be paid off with one small, ugly, finished thing. This month, that converts you from a guardian of the imaginary into a person with data. 5 centuries ago, a man filled thousands of notebook pages with designs for machines that were never built, paintings never painted, treatises never written. A mind so fertile, it needed 4 lifetimes. And in the margins, more than once, in his backwards mirror script, he interrogated himself with the same scribbled question: tell me if anything was ever done. Leonardo, asking himself, in the margins. Tonight, at some point, the film will start playing again, the one where it all worked out. When it does, don't fight it. Just watch for one specific detail. The exact moment your shoulders drop and your breathing slows. That drop is the receipt. You've just been paid. What you do in the next 5 seconds decides everything else. If this found the room where you keep the dream, subscribe to Thinkplicit and do it now, not later. Not as a favor to the channel, as a rep. You've just spent 35 minutes learning what happens to the things you intend to do later.